Welcome to the show, Annie Lalla.
Hi, it's so great to be here. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, your third time here. I'm so psyched. We've talked about, in the past, I think we talked about how do you know if they're the one? And we also talked about kind of the magic of conflict. So today we might repeat some things, but I definitely have a few areas specifically that I want to get into with you. First of all, just remind the listener, you're married, you have a daughter. Just where are you at in your marriage? What's the kind of headline of your marriage these days?
Yes. Well, I'm a love and relationship coach too. So I see romantic relationship as a crucible for personal growth and self-actualization. And your partner is like a shiny mirror that you fell in love with / hired to reflect back all your magnificence and all your marginalized shadow, all your crazy. And I mean that affectionately, you're crazy. Your partner's, there to highlight your crazy, often in the form of complaints, but that's what they're there for. And so we're alive and well in the crucible, my husband and I. And But we've gone through it. We were here together now, let's see how many years? Like 14, 13, all right, stop counting. 12, 13, 14. Yep. And we've gone, like we fought more in the first 2 years of our relationship than anyone I've ever coached. So I just want to say, in my personal empirical experience, the couples that get into it the most in the first year and a half, 2 years, they often get through a lot of the power struggle that that usually plagues relationships over the long term if they don't learn the different ways of navigating reality that comes from both partners and learn to, over time, collaborate and tessellate the different value sets. That's a whole enterprise in itself. And so I'm proud to say, like, after 2 years ago, my husband and I, we met at the Burning Man Festival, and we got married again 10 years after meeting. So 2 years ago was our 10-year anniversary. So I guess 12 years together. 2 years ago, we got married again. And this time we were like, oh, I know what I'm getting into now. I know all the crazy, all the madness, all the shadow, and I'm choosing you again triumphantly. Yeah. And it felt like that was the real marriage, because at the beginning we're like, I hope everything goes well and I love you, and pie in the sky kind of delusions about what our partner's job is. Now we've gotten through a lot of our main conflict. There's no like huge unresolved issue. There was up until about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. But now it's just, wow, your fundamental metaphysical model of reality is so different than mine that how you want to handle this is diametrically opposed to how I want to handle it. Yeah. And I used to go from, you're crazy, criminal, or insane with your metaphysical model, your worldview, to, okay, my husband's always a genius in ways that I'm not. So what he's offering here in his perspective has got some genius brilliance in it if I take the time and energy and curiosity to dig into what are the values, what are what's funding his perspective, so that I can look for the genius. So when I don't like what my husband says, my instinct reaction is, I don't like that. That's like totally at odds with what I would do. Yeah. But now I have a little bit of like, okay, he's earned my trust now. I'm like, all right, you're pretty much a genius, and you can see in dimensions that I can't see. I see a couple as two eyes on one face. Each eye can see wonderfully, but when they work together in tandem, you get this binocular 3-dimensional vision. I see way better when I'm working with Eben's genius than just on my own. And so I'm trying to interview the genius out of his perspective instead of looking for where it's wrong and stupid and not to be attended to. That's the shift we've made over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's huge. I love that. I feel like I heard you guys talk once, I think here in Boulder many years ago, and your talk was basically that collaboration is so difficult, but the end result is so much better. And I agree. It's that kind of binocular vision you're talking about, where my wife and I, for example, we run this training on how to coach couples. We're training coaches on how to coach couples. And we're collaborating more than we ever have. Early on, I just did it myself. Yeah. So much easier. And so now it's so much better, and it's way difficult for us to collaborate and find our way. But man, the training is like exponentially better.
Yeah, I think of collaboration like two legs learning how to walk together. Yeah. So collaboration is when a relationship and I think of a relationship as an entity that has its own identity and needs and wants
Yeah, I'm with you.
alive and conscious.
Yes.
So when a relationship learns to walk, as in go somewhere as a unit, make value as a unit, you have to learn to get those two legs to work together. And it's like a three-legged race. And that's way more work, but that's actually a new upgraded level of intimacy. Mm-hmm. My quote around collaboration is a fucker. Like, it's just the hardest thing. And it's worth it because you get the two different geniuses. How do you tessellate two different geniuses that have opposite perspectives?
Yeah.
That's what love is for, is to figure that out and to not do what most people do when collaboration is courting, either coerce, somehow push, intimidate, oppress the other into acquiescing to your view or manipulate, or to either coerce or collapse. So one person tends to coerce and one person tends to collapse. And collapse is an external or an internal, okay, fine, whatever. We'll just do it your way. I'll just give in. Okay, well, fine. Both of those are an abdication from the collaborative process. And I actually see conflict is a stymied attempt at collaboration. Collaboration is what happens when conflict arises, which are two different perspectives that are wanting to tessellate and find each other, but then you don't know how to tessellate them. One either coerces or collapses, and then you go off into conflict. So collaboration is what happens when you learn the tools of resolving conflict. Nice. And you take those two different perspectives and they work together and they walk somewhere new.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I always love your unique frames and way of describing things. Annie, when you've mentioned values a couple times, and I want to just kind of drill down here a little bit about that. It's in a way, it's like our differences are what make us the kind of a magic team, two people, right? And say something about, I guess, values, like how important is it that people's values are similar or different? I think the fantasy is we have to be the same, or the more similar, the better. But if we're so different that we actually don't like any of the same things, that can also be difficult because we have nothing to do together. So how do you teach and reconcile this difference in values in couples?
Well, I start with a premise that I can't prove is true, but that I advocate has good explanatory and predictive power and utility in your life. And the premise is that any two seemingly disparate systems, any two different bodies of information or knowledge or people or perspectives, there always exists an overlap between those two circles in the Venn diagram. Yeah. Now, the overlap might be a tiny sliver, but my whole profession is me looking for the overlap between two warring partners in a romantic relationship and then camping out in the overlap of the Venn diagram and then building a whole session out of that. And so the belief that any two perspectives, like a Palestinian, Israeli, religious, non-religious, any two dichotomies that you hold, the yin yang, there is a perspective from which their differences are subsumed. So yin yang, if you're standing on the line between the yin and the yang, you're like, well, I've got a yang on one side and a yang on the other, and they're as far apart as two things could be. Yeah. But then if you stand above it and you look down, you're like, oh, they're both part of the symbol called the yin yang that is an interweaving of both polarities. And so transcending dual thinking and polarities and getting that even if I don't know what it is, there is a perspective that you hold on faith. There is a perspective from which both of these different ideas can be seen as working in tandem in a strange paradoxical way. Paradox gets resolved, not at the same level at which it's happening, but right at the next level. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know the question you asked me, but the values. Okay, values. Yeah. So any two different sets of values, what I'm looking for when I'm working with couples is, and sometimes we do this actual work with them, is get them to list out their values separately and in a kind of order of which feels most important to them. Mm-hmm. And then look for their overlapping values. Where do they have shared values? And it doesn't matter. There's always a few. Yeah. If you build the relationship based on those shared values and you use those shared values as the foundation to build up the relationship container, what you're doing is tessellating your values. Mm-hmm. And I actually think you fall in love with your conscience. In some ways, your conscience or your unconscious mind, your yet to be emancipated aspect of your psyche. Mm-hmm. So when you fall in love with someone, you're actually falling in love with their values because of where they're different from yours. because some part of you knows I'm missing like a whole bunch of stuff that I know is important to be whole. And I remember meeting Eben, my husband, and I was like, oh my God, he's good at all the things that I suck at. Unconsciously, I remember tracking that and thinking, he is my portal to learning the stuff that up until now I have not been able to master. And I'm sure that influenced the, hiring him to be my teacher around values that I wanted to have, but I didn't have cultivated yet. Mm-hmm. So we have aspirational values, then we have our actual values. And I think we fall in love with our aspirational values. Mm-hmm. And then when our partner shows up with those values, we're like, hey, that's different from mine. But if you can recognize, oh, I'd like to be like that.
Yeah.
Our partner's often asking us to be in a way that if we were to take on that upgrade, we would actually love ourselves more and love our life more. And so.
Yeah, nice. And there's more of me, like you. It's not the you complete me thing, although maybe that's true. I'm curious what you would say about that, but it's more the way I language it is I hire my wife because she's got my disowned parts, right? She's manifesting my disowned parts. And so that I can actually bring them back in again, but I'm going to need to learn how to love what I dislike outside, right? And then I can do it with me first because she's triggering it over there. And then that allows me to embrace her more.
Yes. And I think it's a bit of both. It's like a lockstep. Hopefully you choose as a partner or you fall in love with, and I know you have, but for everyone listening, you fall in love with the most extraordinary person you've ever met. That's what I recommend. Nothing less than that. And if you're not sure about that, then you need to keep researching, either in the relationship, minimum a year research, I think, or elsewhere. But after a year of research, you've pretty much seen all the patterns. So, I was just got.
You think a year is long enough? I sometimes feel like people can still mask their issues and cover up their issues within a year. I think I can still hide.
Yeah, well, I think you can hide, but you can see how they hide. It's hard to keep a thought on for a year. I'm saying a year minimum. I kind of say this to my clients: a year before you like have a baby or get married, like any of that stuff that commits you, you need a year R&D.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, divorce is, I didn't do my research properly. There's a bit of that, right? Yep. And so I want to make sure we do our research. And you see a lot of the patterns, seasonal patterns, behavioral patterns over a year. It took me 2 years to actually commit in marriage. So it took us longer. It took me a while. But I don't know if I answered your question, though, about...
Well, I can come back to a thread, which is values in the Venn diagram and how important shared values are, because I feel like I want to stay there for a little longer. Mm-hmm. Are you saying, did I sort of hear you say indirectly that if we don't have some shared values, you're saying basically everybody has shared values or they wouldn't be together is kind of what you're saying. So we look for those and then we camp out in there and we build upon, like that's maybe our strength, that's an anchor point for us. Because if I'm in conflict with someone I've been in, I get this a lot, 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, they have so much unresolved stuff and they've lost sight of perhaps their shared values. So what are they to do when they seem so different and they don't see their differences as opportunities?
Okay, so there's 3 entities when 2 people are interacting, right? There's one partner, the next partner, and then the relationship entity, which is an emergent over top. Kind of like the way you have 2 brain cells that are working together to be part of brain tissue. The brain tissue is at another order of reality, and the brain cells are components in that brain tissue system. So in the system of the relationship entity organism, there's 2 components. There's partner 1 and partner 2. And these 2 components, and I'm saying it as because we identify as the partner. We don't often talk about the layer of reality called the relationship. Yeah. And I feel like I coach relationships rather than individuals. Uh-huh. I work for the relationship. Yeah. I answer to the relationship's health. I even say to my clients sometimes, I work for, if they're going to have kids, I work for your future unborn children so that they can look up and feel an integrated family system.
Nice.
I want to be able to look at your kids in the eye and go, I did everything I could for the house not to be fractured. So I work for the relationship entity. And so what I'm looking for is what are the values in the system of their relationship. What is their relationship committed to if you were to able to interview it? Like if I could interview you and your partner's relationship, there is something it would say, like, this is what we stand for.
Totally.
That's what I like to help my clients figure out, because until the relationship has its own identity, values, and purpose, the two components aren't pulled up into that vision. So I'm trying to create a third gravitational body that sort of pulls both components, which is both partners, into their next level. And I don't think most partners don't think I'm part of a relationship. What would serve my relationship rather than what would serve me?
No, they're about me, usually.
There should be 3 votes.
Yep.
What do I want? What does the other person want? And what does the relationship be served by, be nourished by? And that usually is a way to get at a collaboration inquiry without, marginalizing the two partners, because the relationship has its own needs, and its survival depends on certain things that neither partner can argue about.
Yeah, I love that.
Right?
I call that standing for 3. Like, I'm going to stand for myself, I'm going to stand for you, and I'm going to stand for us.
Yeah, and I actually suggest that real magic happens when you start shifting your identity to the relationship with ease, so that you can move in and out of self and relationship, rather than self and other, which is empaths are really good at.
Yeah.
But self and relationship, and you toggle back and forth to see what the needs are of the relationship. It's systems thinking, right? It's climbing into the system and not just being a component. And you also become a leader. The part of a system that influences the system is the most flexible and agile part. So as a partner in relationship, where are you rigid and brittle versus being agile and flexible and creative and open? And then you have more control over the system.
Yeah, nice. I love that. Yeah. Okay. So if I'm in an 8-year, 10-year, whatever kind of stuck place, right? And I'm hearing you, I'm like, okay, I got to think about the relationship more. Is there because actually I think there's a shift in consciousness almost that needs to happen there. Like, what's a tip that I could do to start to orient that way? Because I might be so self-absorbed in my own reactivity or blame or whatever, that thinking relationally in that way, like as an entity itself, feels like a jump maybe.
Yeah. So what I might go in, if we were going to bring it back down to exact, like a situation with a human who's struggling with this, there's a part of them that wants to bail, and there's a part of them that's trying to figure it out with their partner.
Yeah.
And you can feel that quiver sometimes. They'll say it, I don't even know why I'm here. Why are we even doing this? The kind of veiled threat.
I'm not sure I got it in me anymore.
Yeah. And so what I'm trying to do then is get them to notice that they're waffling in and out of the possibility of being in the relationship, and that the relationship, it can't grow into something different until it feels safe. Like, if you want an organism to do their math problems or learn a new skill at school, the organism has to feel safe before they can learn, before it can grow. So I try to show the two partners how their veiled or explicit threats to the relationship, either verbally to their partner or even in their own mind, private threats, that questioning is kind of like, and I treat the relationship like a surrogate baby, and it would be kind of like you taking if you guys had a child together, taking the baby, which is the relationship, and hanging it out over the balcony and saying, okay, I'm going to drop the baby unless you X, Y, Z. Who would ever do that?
Right. Ooh, that's good. That's motivating.
And it's a very visceral visual, and it's like absolutely not appropriate. Nobody would say that's the right thing to do. And yet we do that with the relationship entity. Oh, I'm going to threaten the relationship unless you X, Y, Z. And then even if you do the X, Y, Z, do you still want to be with that scary possibility? So I have relationship threats. I basically say, let's create a 30-day container where we don't threaten the relationship, so that the relationship can find some safety and see what it wants to be when it grows up. And you have to create parenting energy. How can I parent this relationship so it feels safe to even figure out what it wants to be when it grows up? And here's the deal, client, I'll say to the client, if you want to bail, like between you and me, if I'm talking to them privately, if you want to bail, you could, but this dance pattern you're in, you're going to just call it right back in the next relationship.
Repeat.
And you're already in 8 years. Let's build the muscles of what it takes for you to make this a little more healthy and fluid so that you use this relationship as a gymnasium to build your muscles. And then once you're stronger from a more healthy place, you can decide whether this is nourishing net for both of you or not. But don't bail now. You've got the gym membership, you've got the clothes on, you got the running shoes on. Let's max out. When they say I've done everything I can, no, we haven't used the relationship as a gymnasium to build your up until now underdeveloped atrophied muscles. So let's build those muscles. And at worst, you build these muscles. You're better at expressing yourself in relationship, holding boundaries, articulating your needs, whatever. And you can come to the agreement with them. Wow, we build these muscles. And, I don't think we're on the same path together. But then you can uncouple from a triumphant, we did the best we could and I'm proud of us.
Yeah.
Versus I want to give up. Breaking up in a fight is always, I can't be bothered to do my shadow work. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I tell them, you can't break up in a fight. You're not allowed. You have to start a 30-day window. And after 30 days, if for 30 days straight, you're clear that the relationship's not right for you, then okay. So breaking up is an initiation of a 30-day inquiry. Yeah. And it never usually sustains for that time.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, you did. That's great. And then how, I'm shifting gears a little bit, how important or valuable could psychedelics be for relationship work? Because some people can't see their shadow. They can't, even though it's bumping up against their shadow all the time with their partner, for them to actually see themselves and take ownership. Psychedelics are more and more common now and soon to be hopefully really accessible for people in a healing way. I'm curious because I just, I'm making the assumption here that you have experience here because of you go to Burning Man a lot and there's psychedelics there and and we've talked before. So what do you think the role psychedelics have to play with people doing relationships better here?
So psychedelics is a big part of my romantic history. I actually fell in love with my husband in an altered state on a trip. And it was just the awakening moment. We definitely are in love outside of that space. So, and our daughter was actually conceived in an altered space. So it's a part of our life. Let me see. What do I think about that in relationships? I mean, MDMA was originally a relationship therapy drug that was used to help couples move through their stuck issues. What I find psychedelics does is it expands your sense of internal power and self so that now let me see how to put it. All the beliefs that you currently hold and that are rigid, when you're on a psychedelic or an altered space, your beliefs start to melt down into sort of a liquid and you can reform them from scratch, reparse them. And so you kind of get to reinvent your psychic structure. And oftentimes the melting down allows you to let go of psychic structures or belief plexes that were never yours to begin with. They were actually handed down from the lineage and they don't belong to you. And so when you melt them down, the impurities get to come out. And then like liquid gold, you can reform it, designer, into a way of holding reality and relationships that is more conducive to the relationship that you're in, thriving. So I see psychedelics as an opportunity to reinvent the way you relate to life and the world and people. And so if you have a safe setting and circumstance and you go in with a really strong congruent intention, I think it can be absolutely game changing. I've actually spoken publicly about this. I've done psychedelic therapeutic sessions with my entire family, mom, dad, 2 sisters, and a brother for years. And we would do it together on New Year's Eve and work through all the stuff that in between the sessions, we used to shove under the carpet like all family does, like things you don't talk about anymore. And every couple has those things. So doing a psychedelic experience that is shepherded and midwifed in a way that it's safe and trusting, you get to resolve all kinds of stuff that has ossified into resent and move through them. So I'm a big fan of using it intentionally and judiciously, not as an escape. Well, you can't really escape on psychedelics, but to practice exploring what's available when you let go of your rigid belief structures.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm with you. I think, especially in some circumstances, in a healing way, done in a facilitated, safe container kind of way, they're unbelievably helpful, especially for folks that are pretty locked up. Because some of us, it seems it occurs as very difficult to access, like even something that would have me take responsibility for anything, for example. So I'm with you. I think they can just open a door. I don't think they're necessary to have a couple be successful, right? But they certainly can assist certain people in becoming, again, more aware, more responsible for their experience, and then perhaps their heart opens and they have a new, like you said, they're letting go of old templates and upgrading how they relate.
Yeah, my mom was part of an experiment with Johns Hopkins and New York University. They were studying psilocybin on cancer patients. My mother had breast cancer and had recovered temporarily. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I volunteered her to do the study so she could do psilocybin, like pharmaceutical grade psilocybin, with 2 sitters who were well steeped in her history.
Yeah.
And she came out so transformed from those psilocybin sessions that she actually said to me, she thinks she got the cancer so that she could have these sessions.
Wow.
And reinvent her relationship to her own beauty, her own value, her own life. And I'm just so grateful that she got that opportunity to milk from the difficulty and the pain of that experience through the psychedelics to, she said she looked in a mirror and she, for the first time in her life, just saw her own beauty and intelligence. It's not something she ever would describe herself as. Yeah. So I'm just proud that she was able to have that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's powerful too about your family and your healing journey there. Thanks for sharing that. Hey, every month I'm going to be doing a challenge. You've probably heard about it if you've been listening. You've got to be on my email list, however, to get in on the action. And you could win, a relationship course. You could win potentially coaching with me, no charge. You could win coaching with one of our coaches. There's lots of cool stuff that you can win if you play. How do you do that? All you have to do is be on my email list and look for the email that says personal update. In that email, I share a lot of personal wins and losses, highs and lows, podcasts I'm listening to, books I'm reading, favorite song, anything I'm watching, and what my challenges are, what my opportunities are, and of course, the challenge. So just go to relationshipschool.com/challenge, and you are going to be asked to just leave your email address. Okay, and then you're on my email list. Boom, done. And just make sure it doesn't go to spam. All right? relationshipschool.com/challenge. Let's talk about families for a minute. You and I have jammed about this before in the past, about how we kind of get over our baggage with our parents, work through, how do we get to a good place? And I love some of the things you have to say there. First, before we sort of talk about maybe the how-to, a couple of tips on that, why do you think people get really stuck here for decades, sort of blaming their parents for their circumstances?
I think there's a young child inside of us when we're upset about where our parents dropped the ball on loving us or tending to our needs or protecting us. And the young child is indignant and angry. Mom, Dad, you didn't respect my feelings, honor my needs, make me feel safe. And that indignance from the young child self is valid. It has a dignity and an intelligence. And that's why they feel so fiercely blaming and angry at the parents. And I think that's right. I think we have to go through a phase of anger and blaming, not necessarily to our parents, but even if we journal or fight a pillow or work it out in a therapy session, that we have to honor and dignify our rage, our anger, our disappointment at the parental figure that didn't take care of us or love us in the way we needed. Yeah. I think you can't do a spiritual bypass and be like, oh, I forgive my parents. I know they were doing the best they can. You have to rage at what WTF, what the fuck, in a safe container. And after you move through and honor your anger and your frustration and your pain and that little child in them their anger that is right and dignified gets witnessed, then you can move into a phase where you can basically mourn the parent you never had and that you're never going to get. Yeah. And that's another phase. You have to mourn and grieve that. And then after that phase, you get to a place where you realize, oh, my anger and rage at my parents has a dignity and an intelligence, and it never goes away, but it gets processed and integrated. And they were bumbling and fumbling around with the best tools they had, doing whatever they could as a parent. And so what I can have is my rage, anger, without shame and blame. Most humans have anger and shame and blame conflated. So to be angry, so now I can be raging at my mom for being emotionally unavailable. I can access that anger at any moment, and it comes out when I'm mad at Evan, my husband, because I have been conflated. So I can feel that rage, and I don't have blame, shame anymore on she was bad and wrong. I have the anger, and she's not culpable. So it's interesting to have anger without finger pointing, shame, and blaming bad.
Yep.
That is the place that I think people can get to, which frees you. Because when you blame someone, you're connected to them in a way where you're disempowered.
Totally.
And you're elevating them to have power, and you're contingent on whether they do something or not. And so once the part of you that's angry, you honor its anger, and then it gets to grow up to the present time. And in the present time, you realize, oh, that anger is sacred from my child self. It has a dignity, and it's always there. And I'm no longer seeing my parents as culpable or to blame.
Yep.
And where you finally get to, if you can go woo-woo here, is when you realize that on some level, before you were born, you asked the universe, okay, what superpower do I want to have when I incarnate? And you tell the universe, this is the superpower I'd like. And then they go, okay, these parents are the ones that are going to be slightly crazy and slightly good with the right amount so that you can survive and learn a superpower on the back of their crazy based on your personality. And so in some ways, we pick our parents in order to build certain superpowers that we're going to teach and contribute value from. So when you have that frame, you're taking not just radical responsibility for how you react to your parents' infallibilities, but you take radical responsibility for the actual parents that you have and seeing it as they chose you and you chose them, and you made the secret contract to dance this pattern through the world.
Nice.
And why did you choose these parents, and how has it benefited your own development and growth?
Yeah. And even if someone is not woo-woo and they're like, what do you mean, Annie? Like you're saying I chose trauma, like, come on. And they want to get maybe push back there. What I would say to them, and I'm curious what you think, is, look, whether they chose you or not, you had this circumstance happen. You had this childhood and you went through a lot of shit. Well, can you see that there were sensitivities and superpowers that started to arise out of that environment, that now, if you're aware of those, you can actually make a good living off of those, and you can have a life purpose now that's very clear and inspiring and helps a lot of people.
Yeah. And because my mother was emotionally unavailable natively, I became very facile at tracking other people's emotions and helping meet them when they are not sharing what's going on. And I've now made it into a profession. I now footnote my mother, emotional unavailability to my prowess. And I even give her the credit for it. So like, what if my mom took the hit of being emotionally unavailable and the cost to our relationship so that I could get this superpower?
Exactly.
That's one way to look at it. There's something else you mentioned, though, about the trauma. If something exists in the universe, like, forget there's a good God or heaven or hell or anything. If something exists in the universe, like i.e. the universe let it happen. Yeah. Not that it's good or bad, but it existed. So the fact that something existed and happened means it made its way into reality. So arguing that it shouldn't have been there only takes you down a rabbit hole of suffering. I think Werner Erhard said suffering is being in an argument with reality. Yeah. And that means current reality or past reality. If I argue with what happened in the past, I'm literally using a fixed point, the past, whatever happened, to churn up all this suffering and unrest what I can do is change my relationship to the fixed point, but I can't change the fixed point. So how do I allow that fixed point to be fixed and then use my imagination and creativity to dance around that fixed point until I have an empowered relationship to it?
Mm-hmm. Why do people get stuck here though, Annie? Like if we can use victim language, victimhood, when I'm in my victim, right? And I'm really indignant about that, as you say, like it's so-and-so's fault. They hurt me. They did this to me. Some people, I always ask people this, like some people can actually get empowered through that and be like, oh, I see I'm doing that thing again where I'm blaming and it's not actually getting me anywhere. But other people get really stuck here for life. What is the difference between those two people? Like why can some people get completely empowered through deeply traumatic experiences and some people stay really stuck for almost their whole life, if not their whole life?
I think I'm an idealist here, so I can just say that I think that the people who get stuck in victim mentality, wherever their development got arrested, where the trauma happened, where they feel victimized by, no human yet has sufficiently lovingly witnessed and honored the heartbreak and the pain of that child in them at that moment.
Yeah.
And so I would invite them to continue to look for a therapist, a coach, partners, people who can hold space until that why me, heartbreaking, I don't know how to solve this problem, terrified child in them, until that the anguish, the heartbreak and the pain of that child gets sanctioned, witnessed, and honored by another consciousness. A bookmark is there and the book is closed.
Yeah, just hangs on.
You cannot update them to the present moment. No amount of stop using victim language because their brain is stopped at.
Yeah, it's arrested.
It's arrested. I couldn't do anything else. And they're right.
Right.
Now they don't know that they're a grown-up now and that actually that piece of them is bookmarked at a younger age and they always get triggered and regress back to the younger age. So you got to teach them how to time travel from triggered regression back to the present moment, which is self-regulation tools, which I'm sure you teach about.
Yeah.
But really I'm a love coach, so I stand for true love. And I feel like in romantic relationship, when you're with the right partner, your part of your work is to be that loving witness to the heartbroken, terrified child inside your partner.
Yeah.
Until it gets witnessed and can start growing up to meet you in the present moment. And you might not always be able to do it on your own, so you can get support from therapists and coaches. But who I have to be as a wife and a woman and a teacher to be present with my husband's indignant, angry inner child is a heroic spiritual journey for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I use that as...
Yeah, cool. Nice. Okay, we're covering some really good ground here. I'm just going to jump around a little bit. Back to the family real quick, and then I want to move on to spiritual narcissism for a moment. So
and the resistant partner, I was going to talk about that.
Okay. The family unit is can be so complicated. And if someone in the family isn't, quote, doing the work, like maybe some listener could say, well, you're blessed because you have a family who will do psychedelics with you. And they're willing, My family will never do that in a million years, and they're just so shut down, and they won't even talk to the table, and it's toxic, and blah, blah, blah. How do you counsel a person deal with really family members who haven't done their work and have no interest in doing their work? How do you recommend they reconcile with those folks? What's their work?
If we're going to talk about using relationship as spiritual journeys, okay, the ultimate place that we want to arrive at, well, not the ultimate, maybe the penultimate, is when you don't need any other person on the planet to change what they're doing, how they're feeling, or how they're behaving. When you don't need them to do anything for you to feel better, you have arrived. Now, I'm not saying I'm there, but we're aspiring to be there. Yeah. So what you want to practice doing is recognizing what is available in the person to shift and change based on your requests and your invitations. If they're not willing to, that's their relationship to life and future and development.
Completely.
What you want to do is look for how is them not changing, holding you back from your aliveness, and how can you take back your trespassed energy in their space, which is you expecting or needing them to act differently. Totally. Okay? How can you take back that trespassed energy and give back their energy in your space, which is them needing you to be or do or behave differently. Untangle that enmeshment, which is a cord, right? It's like a trauma cord. And stand in your own titanium backbone selfhood and ask, who do I want to be based on those fixed state of affairs in reality? In any moment in reality, it's a fixed state of affairs in that moment. There's what your senses are bringing in. How do you shift and pivot using your intelligence and imagination to not have anything out there have to change for you to feel safe and survive? And this is our work, to learn self-regulation, and how do I change the dance in here rather than trying to change the dance out there? So that's one thing. Also, if you're getting your romantic partner or your parents and you want them to shift and change and become more developmentally savvy, most of us come to our partners and our parents with this energy. Something's wrong with you and you got to go do ayahuasca or talk to a therapist, or you need to get fixed. As soon as they feel that energy, they're like, F you. Until you love me exactly as I am, broken, fallible, and imperfect, I ain't ever changing. And so whenever you get a resistant parent or partner, what's really going on is they don't feel safe enough. Every system changes towards health and growth and development when it feels safe enough. Now, it may not be your karmic dharma to make this person at this time feel safe. It may not. But there is a way that they could be made to feel safe. And if you're interested in taking it on, you could become an inquiry around what that would take. Resistant partner means I haven't yet had the wit or wherewithal to figure out how to make them feel safe so that they could soften into the part of them that's the tip of the root that's always wanting to grow. You can take that on or not, but don't say it doesn't exist.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. Nice. What was the thing you wanted to mention?
I think that was it about a resistant partner. I don't believe in a resistant partner or a resistant client. If I have a client, they're not resistant. Not I haven't been creative enough to find a way to sneak in the back of their castle and unhook the lock and enter and help them, transcend their own, constraints in their worldview. And if you have an intention that you feel proud of, like I'm standing for something I'm really proud of, then do what it takes to inspire another person into that possibility rather than shame. I think of it as the difference between a Martin Luther King speech. We try to change people by shaming and blaming and making them wrong, basically taking the WTF stance. What the fuck's wrong with you stance? Versus a Martin Luther King, I have a dream where someday you walk into the kitchen and you take the dishes from the dishwasher and you put it in the cupboard. You can inspire your partner and your family members with a Martin Luther King energy of what's possible and how you see that future, but you have to be congruent, versus shame, blame, and what's wrong with you, which has people dig their feet in and go, every human knows that they're a divine magical phenomenon happening once and for all and never again. So when you're shamed or blamed or made wrong, some triumphant divine indignance goes, wait a minute, you are trespassing sacred ground. Watch yourself and start trying to make me feel small. My New Year's resolution was every interaction that I have, I want to help the other person fall more in love with themselves and their life, and have me fall more in love with myself and my life. So how would I have to behave so that both of these are optimized? If you take this on in your relationship, you will be navigating your requests and your invitations with a new heuristic that calls your self-esteem up and your partner's.
Amen. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, when I finally accepted my parents as they are, because I tried to change them for years in my indignant self. Damn it, change. When I finally accepted them, it was so cool what happened to our relationship. And they are by no means all of a sudden got on board and are into growth and development. But there's just now space to have a really sweet relationship. And they're just being themselves. They have no language.
Funnily enough, they'll change more when most of us are the leading edge of consciousness in our relationship system. If you're listening to this podcast, you're education for your family. So you're actually the leader of the family system, not the parents. Pretty much by the time you hit 30, you start I recommend to my clients, you should start treating your parents like as if they're needy teenagers that want your approval.
Totally.
Rather than you want their approval.
Yes.
And so what I do is I just look for things that I love about myself that I know I got from my mom or my dad, and I just give them the footnotes every time I see them, authentic.
Yeah.
So that they see that I've taken what they've given me and I've run with it, and I'm really grateful and appreciative, and I give them the kudos. Because you have to manage intergenerational envy, which is the thing that I've been studying, which is my parents, even though they're my parents, they're also humans that are peer-to-peer. Mm-hmm. And when you go beyond your parents in any way, emotional growth, consciousness, success financially, popularity, there's a part of their inner chimpanzee that's like, you've left me, you've gone beyond me. And part of them's clapping, but part of them's like, wait a minute, I used to be boss.
Yeah.
And so you want to honor that they'll have envy, and how the way I manage that envy is I look for things that I'm proud of in myself that I can footnote to them, and I make that transparent to them so that they can always be living through and enjoying my success rather than feeling threatened by it or undermined by it.
Nice. And for the listener, Annie and I talked about this in episode 88, I believe. She unpacked the footnote thing even more, so go check that out. Spiritual narcissism is kind of a version of us kids who are more developed, quote, more developed than our parents. We can all of a sudden now feel superior, right? And there's this new term getting thrown around about spiritual narcissism. I'm curious what your take is on this term.
Well, what my understanding of narcissism traditional is that their narcissist is missing fundamental wiring it's required to do empathy. So they can't feel guilt or shame, really. They can do fake versions of it, but they don't actually have the wiring to care about another person's feelings. Once I realized it was a wiring thing rather than they're just evil vampires, I was like, if a video card's not in a computer and you can't play a video game, it's not like it's a bad computer. It just can't play a video game. Like you don't use it for video games. So, and a lot of narcissists, are very successful icons in the world. So in terms of spiritual narcissism, I would say, JP Sears makes fun of this all the time, but the spiritual narcissism is an extension of this. To be spiritual, to me, because I don't follow anything that a book says about spiritual, to me, being spiritual is the status spiritually for me is how present someone can be and how okay they can be with other people's doing their thing, being themselves. Yeah. And so spiritual narcissism is not allowing other people to be exactly as they are. The more other people feel themselves around you, the higher you are in the spiritual game. Mm-hmm. So it's not about who's doing the sage burning or the yoga mat, whatever. It's, do more people feel in love with themselves and their life around you?
Yeah.
Whoever has the most people feeling in love with themselves and their life around interacting with you, you're winning. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying. I'm not there yet, but I'm working on
that path. Yeah.
Trying to help other people feel that when they're around me and my family in particular.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I always say it's like, it's kind of back to Ken Wilber's work of levels and lines. Like you can be very developed in your yoga practice, meditation practice, whatever, but get married and stay in a long-term relationship and let's see how your development goes. And I think that's the truest measure of your development as a human being is in an intimate long-term relationship, because you can't hide. It just comes out and shows you right where you are.
Yeah. And I secretly believe that tier 2, I don't even know if you can get to it alone. My theory is that in a collaborative romantic partnership, what if you can't get to certain levels of development unless you're working collaboratively in tandem with another human entity? Nice. So that it's the relationship that gets to the next level, not the individual.
I'm with you. Love it. We're winding down, Annie. What else, I guess, do you want to say to the listeners as we wind down? What, just given our conversation, or what's on your mind and in your heart?
Just to notice where you're needing or wanting other people to feel, think, or say, or be something different. And anytime you want that, where you want someone else to be different, or the world out there to be different, that there's a counterpart inside of you that is available to be flexed and changed, and that the desire to have that change and flex out externally is a dodging of your own internal access to growth, development, and spirituality, and having a life that you love. And it's the only place you have power over.
Right.
You don't have power over any of that out there. So, just whatever you want changed out there, especially in your romantic partner, whatever you want them to change, make it a fixed point. Okay. And it's never going to change. Now, who are you going to be in response to that? How do you dance with that in a way that makes the relationship nourished and healthy? And notice that the dance you have to take on in response to that is your actualization.
Absolutely.
Actually, your actualization.
Yeah. So stop the dodging and weaving out there, and because it's actually going on in here, and start really turning toward that inside that you might be avoiding, dodging, not looking at. Because you're right, these other people who are being exactly as they need to be are giving us an opportunity, right, to grow, heal, be more whole, be who we are.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to bed last night and this image came to my mind, so I thought maybe I'm supposed to share it here. But when you're interacting with your romantic partner, if you could train yourself to have this frame, I know you love me. I know you love me, and I love you. And you actually believe that. So you get to, I know you love me and you love me, and I'm confused by this. Can you help me understand it? Whatever it is, whatever they're saying, whatever's happening. I know you love me and I love you, but I'm confused by this. Can you help me figure this out? Because most of the drama comes from a disbelief in either that you love me or that I love you. That's being held hostage.
Right.
But if you actually just surrender to that's a truth, the way you interact with your partner, it will be transformed.
Trust the love, right? First.
And I love you more than I know you love me more than you're angry. I love you more than I'm angry. That piece is always a good trick.
Yeah, it goes a long way. Cool. One more question, and then we'll ask, the listener here will get told, I guess, where to find you. So one of our missions here at the Relationship School is to reach a lot of young people. And I like to ask, if I had a room full of 1,000 high school students and I could only share one thing with them about love, and you were whispering in my ear, what would you want me to tell them?
About love. Trying to see something that's not cliched. Anytime you're with another human and after the interaction, you feel better about yourself, hang out with that person more. Anytime you're in interaction and at the end, when you leave, you don't feel better about yourself, hang out with that person less. Not because they're not good or bad or anything, just because they're inconsistent with what you're up to, which is falling in love with yourself and your life. And so at that moment, they're just not a match for you. But use that heuristic. As you leave an interaction, notice in your body, do you feel expanded or contracted? Do you like yourself more or do you like yourself less? And base your friendships and your relationships on that heuristic rather than anything else going on in your head. Beautiful.
Wow, so good. Awesome. Annie Lalla, where can folks find you?
Yeah, I'm at annielalla.com, ANNIELALLA. I got a lot of free resources on there. I'm actually doing a lot of free programs with my husband. One called Love Dojo, which is a 3-day program where we take couples and help them tessellate their values and create a name for their relationship and basically teach the relationship how to walk as a unit. So sign up for my list and you'll hear about our next program. And I'd love to bring you into my tribe.
So cool. Awesome. Thanks again. Okay, check out annielalla.com. And she's also on Instagram, I believe, at Annie Lalla. So she's out there doing amazing work in the world. Go check her out and go back and listen to episodes 88 and 8. Those are good ones. Cool. Action step. Okay, there's 2 really poignant ones that stood out to me in this episode. Number 1, when you are with a family member or partner that will not change, that feels resistant, right? First, remember that they're probably very scared inside. They don't feel safe, okay? And your way probably has them feel unsafe also. So what do we do? Well, I really liked what she said, which is let's pretend they're fixed and they're never going to change. And so given that possibility, what work do I need to do to orient to that reality? Is it to, okay, I accept that you're never going to change and therefore I'm leaving? Or is it, I accept that they're never going to change and I actually just, I'm trying, my practice is to love them as they are without any demands or requests for change. Could I do that? I think there's lots of options. So make sure you rewind that part for another little clarification there. And a lot of us have a family member, at least, if not a partner or a friend, who won't change. So I think this is a really, really good practice. And then the second action step is to do what she said for high school students. So if you're single and you're dating someone, this is really for you. If you like how you feel during and after the interaction with this person, that's someone you probably want to keep hanging out with. If you don't like how you feel, that's someone you want to hang out with less. I love that. Oh my God. So simple and so good. So try that out, okay? And report back. Oh, the last part of the action step is always to be accountable here. Tell a friend you're doing this action step, one of these or both, and let them know how it went after, all right? Because that's just a way for you to be seen and get like some genuine, authentic connection as well. Cool? Okay. Good deal. Another one is to come to an event of ours. Right now, it might be the Accepted and Connected event. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but we will run that twice a year. But the way you can always get in contact and ask a live question and get some fun interaction with me is to go to relationshipschool.com/training for the latest and greatest. Cool. All right. Have a beautiful rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever you are, and we'll talk soon. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Share one of these videos with a friend. We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships, and you are one of them, so thank you.